Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Hope you're enjoying Empower. Welcome to a quick base session. This is a training style session about relationships and lineage. Now, folks are just getting in, so I want to give everyone a minute or two to get situated, get settled. One thing I want to mention is that this is a live workshop. You don't have to do it with me, but if you want to, it could probably be beneficial for your learning. So if you haven't done this already, either this week or before, I would encourage you to create for yourself a Builder account. It's an account entirely separate from any corporate account you might belong to. It's your playground to learn and build and prototype. All you need to do is go to, and why don't I just put this in the chat for you? quickbase.com/builder-program. I think it'll be easier if I just put that in the chat. Or it's all the same. You can just watch if you prefer. You do not have to build along with me. I wouldn't know if you were or weren't anyway, but if you like to learn by doing, then there's your opportunity. So how are we looking with attendees so far? 25 people here. Welcome. Where's everyone dialing in from today? I'm here in mostly sunny Los Angeles, California. Anyone else here in Southern California? Anyone outside of the States? This may not be your first Empower session, so you may have already heard this several times. Western North Carolina, thank you, Ryan. You may have heard this before, but there's an attendee chat where we can have a little bit more casual banter. You can ask me to slow down, repeat something, tell me that my screen share is slow, etc. And then there's a Q&A. Now, I've only got so much real estate on my screen. I'm going to do my best to pay attention to everything, but I've got an all-star cast of teammates here helping me look through all of that just to see if there's anything that I missed, if there's anything that I can help with, if there are any topics that we can pivot to. So for the Q&A, I would say put in questions there that are going to be the more involved questions that we can potentially put in the parking lot for later. And for anything you say, hey, show us that again. Use the chat for that. So, oh, okay, Philippines, Arizona, 90 degrees in Arizona. Goodness, Detroit, Minnesota, Salt Lake City, Chicago. We got some good representation here. Central Kentucky, South Africa, all over the world here. Okay, so let's not spend any more time awaiting. Let's go ahead and get started. So welcome to Relationships and Lineage. The goal of this session is to give you a few hints and suggestions for how to make your apps more streamlined and make the structure simpler. So this is a rhetorical question, but feel free to answer it in the chat. How many folks here feel like one or more of their apps could probably be built or refactored to be a little bit simpler? Do you have any apps where you think you have maybe too many tables, maybe relationships that aren't necessary? Did anybody inherit an app? They didn't build it, but it belongs to you now. And you're not exactly sure if the structure is the way that it should be. If any of that resonates with you, then I think this session is going to be good for you. So just to say a quick hi, my name is Benjamin. I'm a product trainer here at QuickBase. I'm about to celebrate 8 years next month, so thanks for having me for 8 years. Here's to another 8 years or more. Just for some housekeeping here, you are probably used to this already. This is probably not your first session of Empower sessions, but with the On24 platform, you can resize, minimize, move, and drag all of these panels around. So there will be a time where I start screen sharing and my video is going to go away. That's intended, that's normal. The slideshow will always be there, so feel free to minimize it when we get into product itself. And as I mentioned before, if you were with me before, you heard this already, but if you just joined in the last minute or two, this is a workshop style session. You can just watch if you want, doesn't matter to me. But if you like to learn by doing, we're going to walk through some exercises. You can just kick back and watch. And if you later on wish that you'd built with me, good news is that this is being recorded anyway. So you can always come back and watch the recording and build along with virtual me. And if you want to build along with me at the time, though, and if you haven't done this already, we've been talking about it all week, you can share this in the chat with you, create your own builder account. So completely separate of any corporate account you might belong to. You can have your own playground for prototyping, for practicing, for learning QuickBase. Let's talk about today's training and my goals for you, fine folks here. With relationships and lineage, I'm hoping that by the end of this session, you're going to feel comfortable with the following. Feel comfortable with understanding why creating unnecessary relationships can create needless complication in your app. We're really going to focus on this idea of when a relationship is necessary and when it is not. Now, earlier this week, we dropped a fun announcement about advanced formula queries being able to basically connect tables without relationships. That is way into the future. Not exactly sure when that's going to be in product, but as far ahead as I can see, relationships will always be something you can create. So if you prefer to create relationships the way that you have been, that's going to stick around, and this lesson will be evergreen. I want you to feel comfortable understanding how to identify when a relationship is not necessary. And I want to help you identify lineage in your app, recognize it, and how to build to accommodate a streamlined data model. So my hope is that after this session here, you'll be able to go back to your apps. And if you haven't done this before, you'll be able to recognize what I call lineage in your apps and then identify if any relationships really aren't totally necessary. Now, there is hours and hours of content we could cover here. So I'm going to cover the high-level stuff in this hour and 75 minutes. Should you have more questions, please feel free to find us in the QuickBase Slack channel about these sessions so that you can ask more questions. So here's how we're going to learn today. First, I'm going to do a quick review of relationships. There should be an S on there at the end. Let's just pretend it's there. We're going to do a quick review of how relationships work so that we can understand what lineage is and why too many relationships and extra relationships can be a bit of a burden. We'll talk about how to identify those unnecessary relationships and what makes them unnecessary. And then I'll describe how this concept of lineage works. And lineage isn't really mentioned in the help guide. It's not something you'll see in the software itself, but it exists. And then, as with a lot of things in QuickBase, there are occasional exceptions to the rule. So I will talk about those exceptions, about when extra relationships actually are okay or maybe even necessary. And then finally, where I'm hoping we'll spend the bulk of our time today, a build-along workshop so you can learn with me about how to take advantage of lineage instead of creating extra relationships. So I saw in the chat several people, those scenarios resonated with you. You might have an app or two or more where you feel like there's unnecessary complexity or you inherited an app that you didn't build. So let's get into the topic and get you that help that you need. So first, let's just do a quick review of relationships for the uninitiated and just for folks who would like a refresher. So let's imagine that you have an app where maybe among other things, you're going to use this app to recruit and hire. Is anybody doing that right now, actually? So in this app, you might have several tables, including a candidates table and an interviews table. Now, if you think about the way these two tables could be related, you would probably say that a candidate is likely to be interviewed many times if they're fortunate, if they're doing well, right? When we think about relationships, in QuickBase, they are classically just presented as one-to-many, where one record from one table could have many records of another. So you would ask yourself, is it more true that a candidate could have many interviews or that an interview could include many candidates? And I've heard of the latter happening before. I've never seen it. I've never been a part of it. So in my world, candidates typically could have many interviews. So when you create this relationship, QuickBase does a couple of things. First, it says, okay, the table on the one side of the relationship is the parent. The table on the many side is the child. This is going to be important for later when we talk about lineage. I'm going with that familial kind of theme here. Now, when you create a relationship, QuickBase does some things for you automatically. And if you've inherited an app and that was your welcome to QuickBase, then it may have taken you a little bit of time to learn about this. But QuickBase creates some assets for you every time you create a relationship. You don't have to use all of them, but I do want to go over them and explain why they're helpful and why sometimes they give us this idea that we should relate every table to each other. Have we done that before? I know I did that in my first app or two. So when you create a relationship, a couple things happen. On the parent table, you get two things that allow you to add and view these child records. So when we relate these two tables, we'll be able to look at a candidate record, add interviews to that candidate right from there, and see a whole list of those interviews for said candidate. That's the child button and the report link. Those are just created for you automatically. And on the child table, you're given a pair of reference fields so that when you're looking at an interview, you can see the candidate that the interview was with. Or when you're adding an interview, you can pick the candidate, depending on your workflow. And you also get the ability to create some extra, we'll call them relationship fields. On the candidates table, you can summarize information about the child records, those interviews. And on the child table, you can create what we call lookup fields. So in a, I guess a literal sense, they look up to the parent table and pull information down. Pull down fields, lookup fields. So that way, when you're looking at an interview, you can see, let's say, the name of the candidate, the date they applied, maybe the role that they're applying for. That's a good one, right? And this is what it looks like, or what it could look like, when you're actually looking at these records. So when you're looking at a candidate record, let's take a look at Haley here. Haley has some contact information, an application ID, that's probably like an internal number created automatically, right? The date that she applied, the job she applied for, oh, good job. The ID of that requisition, the department, so on and so forth. And then on the right, we have an interview record. So done some dressing up of this a little bit, but we see Haley's name, we see her application ID, and then we see all the information about the job she applied for. Then we have a couple boxes down at the bottom, some fields to plug in the date of the interview and our notes. Now, the relationship facilitates a lot of the stuff you see on screen here. That button over to the left that says Add Interview, that's your Add Child button, and QuickBase creates it for you automatically. It does not make it fuchsia automatically. It was my styling, but it adds that there for you so that, well, we can take advantage of relationships and say, I'm interviewing this candidate, I want to add an interview, and I do not want to type in all of the information about the candidate again. That already exists. So that add interview button would take you over to the image you see on the right. And down below that, you've got your report link, which it's a field, but it displays a report. So it's kind of a means to an end. It displays an embedded report of all the interviews that that candidate has had or maybe will have in the future. And then over to the right, you get a reference field / proxy. It's basically QuickBase's way of saying, hey, here's the parent that you are tied to. You may or may not use it by hand. It just depends on your workflow. So do you start from the candidates table and click Add Interview? Do you go to the interviews table, click Add Interview, and then pick the parent candidate based on their application ID? That's up to you. But that's what that field does. And then from there, you've got the ability to create several relationship style fields, summary fields, and lookup fields. So on the parent table, I've decided to create a summary field that tells me what is the most recent interview this person has had. And if you take a look at those 3 interviews, you can see that June 30th was the most recent one. Over to the right, you see these lookup fields here. The position, the rec ID, department, the name, all the stuff that when you're adding an interview, you need that info, but you don't want to type it in again. You already have that information tracked at the candidate level when they applied. That's the whole benefit of relationships. So sometimes what happens is, as builders, we see what these relationships do, and we go, that is cool stuff, and I need these other 2 tables to trade information, so I'm going to relate them, right? But here's the thing. You don't always have to do that because of Lineage. You don't have to relate all your tables together just because you want them to trade information. And here's what makes excess relationships problematic. Sometimes these excess relationships create competing choices for the users to populate data. Sometimes these extra relationships enable several workflows to do the same tasks. And now you as an admin have to facilitate multiple workflows, or occasionally you have someone tell you that they were able to do something by accident and you didn't even know that they could do it that way. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Sometimes these excess relationships can force the user to enter in data redundantly. So they say, I just picked that. Why do I have to pick that again? Why do I have to type that in again? And sometimes excess relationships can lead to incomplete or conflicting data. So what I would want to step back for a moment and do is ask you folks, Does any of this resonate with you? Do you have any apps where you think some of these challenges are coming up? Have you had conversations with people who use your apps and you hear some of this stuff? Because if so, this lesson here might help you solve those problems. So reflect on that for a moment as we get into what Lineage is all about. So let's talk about Lineage first. And what is it? Lineage is simply sequences of relationships. So earlier I said we were going to talk about parent-child. Those two terms are going to be important. Lineage is a sequence of relationships between different tables. And lineage ultimately means that we can leave tables unrelated if they don't need to be directly connected. So lineage helps us avoid, or if we have them already, remove potentially unnecessary relationships. So this data model here to the right, maybe you're using QuickBase for something similar, but this is a classic example of what we call a CRM, a customer or client relationship management system. And this is just the beginnings of one. But in this example here, we have a companies table, a contacts table, and an activities table. And there are two relationships that are technically facilitating lineage here. We would like to be able to track many contacts per company. And we would like to be able to track many activities per contact. Of course, if you're advanced in relationships, you might figure that activities could have many contacts too. Yes, there could be a many-to-many relationship. Let's keep it simple for now, though. A contact, hopefully, if you're having a good relationship with that person, you have many activities with them. Now, lineage comes into play here. Companies and activities are unofficially grandparent and grandchild to each other. And you might think that those two tables should trade information, and they probably should, right? So, for example, when you look at an activity record, you sent an email to Ryan. You want to know the company Ryan works for, right? You want that all on one screen. So you might think, I need activities and companies to talk to each other so that they can trade data. Or you might want to look at all of the timestamps of these activities, when they happened, and summarize some of that superlative information up to the companies table and say, I want a quick view of all of the companies that I work with and the last time that I had an activity with them, the last time I sent an email, the last time they emailed me, the last time we had a meeting. So you might think, well, based on what I know about relationships, I'm going to have to relate those two tables together. I'm here today to tell you that you don't have to do that, because lineage can take care of that for us. And if you did relate those, I would say that that's arguably an unnecessary relationship. Sometimes it's okay, but a lot of times you don't need that connection there. That's why I have a dotted line pointing, because those can trade information, but they don't have to be related directly. So what do I mean by unnecessary relationship, though? Like, how do you know? Because the software is not going to tell you, hey, you shouldn't build that relationship, because maybe it's right. But here's how you can tell if it's right or not. Really easy rule of thumb here. Let's just connect those two tables for a moment visually and say, what if we did relate companies to activities? I'm going to say that that connection there is potentially an unnecessary relationship. Why? How do I know? We'll take out the table in the middle for a moment. Let's take contacts out of the equation. So what does an activity with a company look like if you're not having it with a contact, right? So if you work with customers, what does it look like to have an activity with just the company, but not with a specific contact? You probably wouldn't do that, right? You're probably always going to have an activity with someone, a contact at that company. Let's use another example. This one's a little bit closer to my heart. Here, as a trainer, I lead many training events. And these events typically have many participants. So I would say it would be great for me to be able to take some of that participant information and roll it up to the trainers table. I would also like some trainer information to be visible on the participants table, because if you leave us feedback, I'd like to see the trainer that you left the feedback for. So I would say, though, that a relationship between trainers and participants is not necessary. You could argue it could be, that's fine, but I would say for my purposes here, I don't need it. And why is that? Again, let's take out the middle table for just a moment. Shouldn't participants always be tied to an event? Unfortunately for all of us, I don't do one-to-one training quite yet like that. So you can't just book my time with just me, unfortunately. But you can come to my events that I teach, right? And so we wouldn't connect participants directly to a trainer. That wouldn't be purposeful. And if we did, what this would require us to do is connect the participant to the event and to the trainer. And isn't that kind of redundant if the trainer led the event? So Lineage helps solve all of that for us. So Lineage works like this. Let's go back to that example right there. Lineage works because of three methodologies and methods of data reference. The first is this idea of lookups of lookups. What does that mean? Let's walk through an example. On the trainers table, I might have a field for trainer name. Now, with each event, I would like to see who the trainer was, right? So we use a lookup field in that relationship. Now, a lookup of a lookup would be something like this. We want to see the name of the trainer that led the event that a participant joined. So we look up that lookup again and bring it all the way down. That's a lookup of a lookup. I imagine plenty of you are employing that technique right now, whether you know it or not. Another method of data reference is a summary of a summary. Here's an example for you. When we do our training events and you participate in them, we ask you for feedback. We say, how did we do? On a scale of 0 to 10, that's known as Net Promoter Score, NPS. So we might track that at the participants table, send you an email and say, hey, participant, thanks for joining us. Can you give us a 0 to 10 rating? Let us know. Would you recommend this to someone else? Now, we would like to see the NPS for the events themselves. How did this event do? But we would also like to see, how are the trainers themselves doing? How's Benjamin doing? Are people giving him a bunch of 5s or 10s? So that would be a summary of a summary. Now, this might be familiar to you, maybe not. The final data reference is something that I think most folks don't tend to stumble upon on their own. There was a quick hit video, a pre-recorded video done by Lee Gilmore that you can go check out anytime, all about report links. And it covers a lot of similar material to this particular data reference method here, custom report links. So earlier when we talked about the relationship features that you get when you relate two tables, one I mentioned was a report link. And I guarantee you that most of the report links in most of your apps are created automatically because you created a relationship. Well, you can create your own. So for example, if you wanted to see something like all of the feedback from participants that attended events led by a certain trainer, you could create a report link at the trainers table to say, hey, I want you to go look at this other table. It's not a child table, it's a grandchild table. And I want you to show me all of the NPS responses for that trainer across all of their events. Now, from my experience, 8 years of quick-based building here, a lot of the unnecessary relationships that builders create are because they want to see embedded reports like that. So I would turn that question back around to you, which is, have you ever wanted to see that embedded report from some other table so you create a relationship? Because that's how you know to do it. So I'm going to show you how to create your own report links to connect tables that, hey, they don't even have to have lineage. As long as there's a commonality, you can tell these report links to show records from a different table, even if they're in a different app. But let's not go too crazy with that. Let's just start with some of the basics. And let's talk about exceptions, because sometimes those relationships are okay. And maybe as I've been explaining this, you've been thinking about some of your relationships and you've been going, well, actually, I think mine is okay. And it might be. So let's talk about two exceptions where what these unnecessary relationships, as I've called them, can actually, be helpful. So exception number one, it all depends on your workflow. So let's go back to the CRM example for a moment. Companies have many activities. Companies have many contacts. Contacts have many activities. You might create that relationship between companies and activities because your workflow might look something like this. You want your sales team, your customer rep team, to start by clicking Add Activity. They just had a great phone call with one of your customers, so they're going to click Add Activity to log those notes. So they get to that activity record, they type in some information, then they go to pick the company from a list, from a dropdown, right? So that's the companies table. And once they pick a company, for example, they're going to pick Wind Wakers LLC. Now, the contact drop down below says, well, you picked Wind Wakers LLC, so we're only going to show you the contacts from Wind Wakers LLC. Those are both referring to tables elsewhere in the app. Has anyone ever needed to do that? That's called a conditional dropdown. So if you need something like that, then yeah, go ahead and build that extra relationship between companies and activities, because you actually do need it. Now, there are some other considerations to keep in mind when you do that. So if you're interested in learning more about this, I should have had this over to the side and ready to go, but I'm going to go ahead and share with you a link to a training we'll be doing in June, just a few weeks, about conditional dropdowns. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and train your eyes over to the chat here, because I just shared a link with you. Feel free to register and we'll see you there. So that's one exception. If you need a conditional dropdown, then you will need that extra relationship. Exception number 2 is just when the relationship makes sense on its own. So sometimes you just need that relationship, and when you see that in the data model, you might think back to this training and say, he said it was unnecessary, but sometimes it's okay. And this example here, similar looking data model, different tables, projects, tasks, and comments. So a project can have many tasks. A task could have many comments, team members leaving comments and having some dialogue. You might have some comments just about the projects too, even if it doesn't pertain to the actual task at hand. So you might want comments about both the tasks and the projects. So that relationship makes sense. If you wanted to add comments to the project, but not specifically a task, then you do need that relationship, and that's fine. So you can use projects to comments, that relationship, so that there's just general discussion about the projects. And you could still use these properties of Lineage to say, but how about this? When we look at a project, show us all of the comments, whether they are related to the project or the tasks. Okay, so how do we feel about all of that so far? I'm gonna keep an eye on the chat here and see if I can refresh it, because it's been a little quiet the last little bit. Hopefully that means that I'm walking you through some things to think about. But let me know what you're thinking so far, if you think this is relevant for you, if you've tried to think through this before, or if there's anything you want to point out that maybe I haven't yet. Because again, this could be hours long. I got to keep it to 75 minutes. So let me know what's on your mind. I'm going to do a quick check of the Q&A, and then I'm going to go ahead and get us into the build along workshop. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the workshop, and I'll walk you through what we're going to do here. And awesome, thank you. Glad to hear it's relevant. Okay, great. What we're going to do is we're going to grab an app from the Exchange. If you're using a builder account, you're going to use the image on the left to find where the Exchange is. If you haven't done this before, I'll walk you through it. If you're using your corporate account, from the My Apps page, you're going to look for something that says Explore Sample Apps. And okay, awesome. Okay, great. I'm glad this is working for you, folks. Thanks for the instantaneous feedback. It helps. If someone told me that this wasn't working and it didn't make sense, I would absolutely pivot and try to make it make sense. So I appreciate that. And let me know if at any point it isn't making sense. So we're going to get to learn by doing, or you can learn by watching me do, but we're going to grab an app from the Exchange. That app is going to be called, well, it's a long name, but you're going to look for Relationships in Lineage. So I'm going to disappear off the screen myself, and I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we're going to do this together. So I'm going to start the screen share. I know that the screen share might be a second or two behind. So just let me know if what I'm describing and talking you through doesn't match what you see on screen. So I'm going to look here to see what I'm presenting. It looks like we are live here. Excellent. So you should see my cursor moving up the top just a little bit. There it is. So I am logged into my builder account. What I'm going to look for is over to the right. Now I'm zoomed in just a little bit because I want to make sure that you can see the words on my screen. If I can zoom in more, let me know. I'm going to look over to the right, and in this Learning and Help section here, I'm going to look for Change. It's the bottom offering here in that right-hand Learning and Help panel. So I'm going to click Exchange. Now, when the Exchange loads, you'll have a box in the upper left to search. You're going to search for the following: relationships and lineage. I'm sorry I made it such a long app name. I put it in the chat just in case, so you can copy that, paste that in. That should narrow your search results down to one single app that is named with such a long name that we had to cut it off. Training Companion, Relationships, and Lineage. Go ahead and click Get This App. It's going to add it to your account. You can name it whatever you like, especially because this is going to just put in an ellipsis because it's too long of a name. So feel free to call it Relationships and Lineage, or Unnecessary Relationships, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it Relationships and Lineage. When you're ready, hit Create. Now, I've had this app sitting around in the Exchange for a few months, and it had different iterations of it too. I'm always finding things I wish I had changed. Every time I present, I think of something I could do better. I'm sure we'll find one of those today too. But just to walk you through what this app is doing, I'm going to take you to the structure part of the settings so that you can see the tables and the relationships and the lineage in this app. So I'm going to take my cursor, I'm going to bring it over to the gear in the upper left, or the cog, as I hear it called a lot, or I've even heard sprocket. I'm going to click on the settings. And once I land in the settings here, I can see my screen share is just refreshing. So once I land in the settings, I'm looking for structure. It's in the left-hand panel here under Basics. You see that here? I'm going to click Structure. Now, you might know this as an area where you can add tables, you can add fields, you can create relationships. For now, we're just going to look. We're just going to observe. So let's take a look at what the structure of this app looks like. What we're going to see is we're going to have a companies table, a contacts table, and an activities table. So companies related to contacts, contacts related to activities. What we are going to do today is we are going to create a lookup of a lookup so that we can pull company information down to the activities table. We're going to create a summary of a summary so that we can summarize activity information up to the companies table. And we're going to create a report link on the companies table that shows us a window into the grandchild activities without having to create a relationship between companies and activities. Because again, I'm not sure what an activity just with a company looks like, except maybe sending something like a fruit basket to the front lobby or something if I don't know anyone from that company. But we're going to leave this without its extra unnecessary relationship. We're going to learn about Lineage. Let's get into it. You have an exit button in the upper right. Go ahead and click exit. Let's just take a quick tour around the app too so that we can get some context and understand what the app builder created here. That's me. So let's head over to one of these companies. Now you can click on the companies table, or you can just look at the all customers report down below and pull up one of the, let's pull up Blue Storm here. Why not? So this record here, Blue Storm. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit because I feel like I could probably zoom a bit more. There we go. Now, when I'm doing a tour of an app, I like to edit a record. I don't necessarily change the data, but I just like the way it looks because the user or the viewer can see what the fields do and what they look like. So I'm going to take my cursor and I'm going to bring it up to the edit button up here. I'm so zoomed in that it doesn't even say edit anymore, right? You can see that there. It's just a pencil. But I'm going to click edit anyway. And we'll see that the fields up at the top include company, industry, account manager. There's some good information here. There's a little bit of a spoiler too as to what we're going to create for a summary field, because look at this thing here, last activity. We're going to play around with that a little bit later. And it's going to feed into this outreach required. Why is that? Well, if you look at the tooltip for outreach required, it says checked means it's been more than 30 days since the last activity recorded. So I've set this up to be a little intelligent to say, hey, company table, go look at all the activities that are your grandchild records. If you don't see an activity within the last 30 days, I need you to check this box because I want my team to reach out to companies every 30 days at least. If you haven't reached out within 30 days, you need to check that relationship. Now, down below, if you scroll down, there's a section for contacts and activities. And down below, this company has 2 contacts, Danny and Celeste. And if we open up, let's say, Danny's record here. So I'm going to view Danny's record, or you could edit it. It's up to you. We have some information about Danny, her status, her title, and then the company that she works for. That's where we just came from, right? That is your reference field or reference proxy there. And then down below, you've got some activity information here. Now let's go look at the activity that we have logged here. Looks like I logged a catch-up call with Danny, and this was back in October. Goodness, it's been a while. So let's open this up and let's look at that record and see what exactly is going on with that activity. Okay. There's something missing from this though, right? So if I didn't type such good details, there's something important that I wouldn't know if I were just looking at this activity. Anyone want to hazard a guess as to what's missing here? What key piece of information should I have here, or what would you add in here that is missing? I'll let you think about that for a moment while I take a sip of water here. I see some answers rolling in here. And I like what you're thinking. Company. Yeah, it's a good thing that I typed the company in right here into the details because it sure isn't on screen anywhere else here, right? Now, if you didn't know any differently, you might say, oh, well, if I need the company, then I need to go relate activities and companies. But there's a good chance that if you didn't hear me say it a few times before, you may have already known that we can get that information without creating another relationship. So let's walk you through how to create a lookup of a lookup. If you don't know how to do this, no worries. You'll find it to be just a few clicks away. I think you'll see that it's not too complex. And you might even learn that you've already done this and you already know this. You just haven't thought of it this way. So let's do this. Let's go back to the companies table. I'm going to click companies up at the top. And then from the companies table, I'm going to head into the settings. Now there is a more efficient, fewer clicks way to do this, but I want to just take you from the very start here. So I'm going to take you through a few extra screens. We're going to go into the settings of companies. And we're going to look on the left-hand side of the settings for the table-to-table relationships. And we're going to open that link. We're not going to create a new relationship. We're just going to look at the existing relationship that companies has with contacts. Okay, so if you look at the companies and contacts relationship, here's all the information that these two tables rely on with their relationship. And take a look over here. One of these lookup fields, it's the reference proxy, technically a lookup field, if you will. This means that each contact knows the name of the company that it's added to, right? That makes sense. What we're going to do is we're going to pass that information down to activities. Yes, and I'm just remembering an analogy that I came up with a few months ago that I'm really starting to like. If anyone here ever ran track or field or has just watched a track event, you may have seen the relay, right, where a baton is passed from one runner to the next. So that baton is passed from runner 1 to runner 2 to runner 3 to runner 4. Runners 1 and 3 don't meet on the track, right? Runners 1 and 4 don't meet on the track either. They pass the baton. And that's what you're doing with lookups of lookups and summaries of summaries. So we're going to pass the baton. And to do that, you're going to take your cursor, you're going to bring it to the upper left. You see where it says company settings? Put your cursor over that. Because what we want to do is we want to move over to the contacts settings. So in the upper left, you're going to click company settings, and you're going to switch this over to contacts. Now, once your screen refreshes, just look in the upper left, make sure that you are on contacts settings. A lot of these screens look the same. It can be easy to get lost sometimes when you're doing a lot of building. You're going to go find the table-to-table relationships. There are 2 of them, right? And this would have been the more efficient way if I just took you here first, but I wanted to make a point. So we're going to go to contacts to activities. We're going to open up that relationship there. So make sure you're picking on that one there. Okay, so here's what the activities table knows about the contacts table. Just the number of the contact, like their record ID in this system, and their name, because us humans probably don't want to try to remember record IDs all the time. What we're going to do is we're going to click Add Lookup Fields, and we're going to pull down the company name. And you may have done this before. Again, this is something that maybe you're used to. But the point here is that because of your lineage, not only can you get contact information, you can get any information that contacts is privy to, including the company. So look at that. When I click Select a Field, company is right there. And that's how activities and companies can talk to each other without us having to link them with a relationship. So when I click Create, go ahead and click that yourself. Now you've got contact dash company. You might want to rename that. It's telling you what table it came from. But either way, go ahead and let's leave the settings. Exit settings is available in the upper left. If you want to see that one more time, let me know. We can always go back. In the meantime, if you're ready, click Exit Settings. And let's just go take a look at what QuickBase does for us and what we now do with this. So when you're back at the front end of your app, go ahead and go to Activities. Open up one of those activities, any one. It doesn't matter which one. If you want to find the one with Danny, that's fine. And now we're going to see that the contact company has been added to the bottom of the form because my form's default settings are set to do that. All right, so we've got our tables talking to each other, even though they're not directly related. That's some cool, impactful stuff. And that helps us with more than just looking at this form, right? Think about this. Now we can have activities reports where we group things by the company. Or we can have activities reports where we use a dynamic filter to say, I'm looking for all the activities for just one company in particular. We've just unlocked some additional possibilities. So I might just be geeking out by myself over here, but even 8 years in, this still gets me excited about building in QuickBase. So I hope that is insightful for you. Let's go talk now about summaries of summaries. So, oh, right, I forgot to advance these slides here. So we just did a lookup of a lookup. We made company information visible on activity records. Go us. Next, and thank you, I see that feedback and chatter in the chat there. Thanks, folks. Glad this is resonating. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a summary of a summary. And we are going to see the date and time of the next scheduled activity on both the contacts and customers tables. So we're going to have activities send out information to contacts and companies, figuratively speaking, in our app. So here's the rub. Here's what I'm talking about. Look at the activity that you have on screen here. The one I have says the activity date is 10/29/2020. That was a long time ago. Now, a summary field will allow me to summarize superlative information up to a parent table. Check this out. Click on the contact's name, whoever that is. And you're going to see at the bottom of the contacts record here, at the bottom of this form, the last activity. Did you know you could summarize date and time fields? That's some cool stuff, huh? So this is telling us the date and time of the last activity. If I were to go and add another activity, this would be updated. So go ahead and try that. Add an activity to this contact here. Go ahead and click Add Activity. Put this activity in the past, if you don't mind. So whatever you want to call it, that is fine. You can call it a quarterly business review. How about that? And say that it happened yesterday. How about that? Just put it as yesterday at whatever time you want. That part isn't too important as long as you set it to, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't feel too long ago, huh? Time's a little funny these days, isn't it? So we're going to remember this date here, right? 5/26/2021. That was yesterday. Whatever date you put in here, go ahead and click Save and Close. This will take you back to the contact. And then look down at the bottom of the contact record, and you're going to see that the last activity has been updated. Isn't that neat? It's cool how summary fields can do that. So now it just knows to look at all the activities for this contact and say, here's the latest date. But now check this out. Find the company that this contact belongs to. So for me, this is Danny working for Bluestorm. Click on Bluestorm or whatever company you're looking at. And now look at the top. Look at the last activity here. Now, come on, is that cool or what? Has anyone else done this before? There's a good chance someone here has. But that's a summary of a summary. Companies and activities aren't related. But again, we're passing the baton up. So now I can say, hey, there are a lot of contacts that relate to this company. When was the last time I spoke to any of them? And I even have it informing, I should say, have it informing this outreach required field. It's a formula checkbox, and it says, hey, look, if this date isn't within the last 30 days, or if the date is blank because you've never reached out, then you got to reach out, pal. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a complementary field. It's going to be a summary of a summary, and it's going to summarize the next scheduled activity. So we're going to be proactive. We're going to schedule activities moving forward, and then we're going to put that information up at the top here so that we can see with every company, when's the next time we're scheduled to talk to someone there? And we can leave that on the contacts table, of course, because the baton's going to pass through that table so that when we look at a contact, we know when's the next time I'm speaking to this person. So the efficient way to do this would be to head to your contacts table. So go ahead and go to contacts, and when you get there, you're going to head into these settings. So again, settings is on the left there. Click that gear. Now, activities holds the baton, right? Activities has the date and time field that we want. So we're going to go to the relationships. There are two of them here. We're going to open this up, and we're going to go to the relationship that has contacts connected to activities. Let's pass that baton. Open that relationship. You'll see that to the left, we've already summarized last activity. If we wanted, we could look at it, but let's just create this new one, and we'll call it next scheduled activity. So you're going to click Add Summary Field. Now, is this anyone's first time creating a summary field? I am curious. Don't be shy. Go ahead and let us know. Everyone has their first time creating something in QuickBase. So this is your first time creating a summary field. I'm curious. So what summary fields allow you to do is take information from the child table and bump it up to the parent. And I say superlative because what it does is it looks at all the child records you tell it to, and it summarizes that information for you. And you can say something like, I want the oldest date. I want the newest date. I want the highest quantity. So, okay, yeah, I see some first timers here. All right, I'll walk you through it here. And we even have a new option here. Anyone who's done this before might notice something new. Really cool binary option if there are any child records at all. I got super excited when I saw that. It saves us a step. Yeah, I'll go back a step real quick, Alfredo. So folks, if you're here, you can hang here. You don't have to go anywhere, but just a step back because it was asked. We're looking at the contacts to activities relationship here, Alfredo, and we're going to click Add Summary Field. I wouldn't say it's in the lower left, but of everything on the screen, it is the most lowest left. I'll have to rethink of that sentence, but it's the thing in the lowest left part of your screen here. Let me know if that's not what you are observing on your screen, and we'll take another step back if we need. So adding this summary field here, here's what we're going to do. And keep in mind, this is being recorded as well. So if at any point you get a bit stuck and you just prefer to say, you know what, I'll just watch, you'll have the chance to come back and finish it up later. What we're going to do is we're going to switch the radio button here. There are 3 radio buttons up at the top, right? So yeah, that's a fun new option, isn't it, Trevina? So we're going to click a new, we're going to click a summary of a specific field. So switch the radio button to summary of a specific field. Now, when you do that, you get to choose what kind of superlative you want here. And there might be a different word I could be using there, but you can choose if you want a total, average, minimum, maximum. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to choose minimum from the list. You want the minimum for the field activity date. So give me the earliest date and time in all of the activities. Well, wait a minute. Is that really what we want? That's kind of what we want, right? That's like part of what we want. We have a little bit more work to do here, though, because if you think about it, this is just going to give us right now the first activity we had with someone. That's not really what we're trying to say. We're trying to say, give us the next one. So how do we express that? Well, if you look at the bottom of the screen here, you have this option for matching criteria. I don't know why that word took so long. We have this section for matching criteria. And this is where the filtering engine allows you to specify that you're actually looking into the future. If you've ever created a report and set a filter, you know how to do this. If you've ever set up a notification and you've set up the reason why the notification is sent, you know how to do this. What you're going to do here is in the matching criteria, you're going to click select the field. You're going to choose activity date from the list here. And you're going to say activity date is on or after today. Now, I guess technically, if you're at the end of your day, you might see something that happened earlier today. So it's up to you how you want to set this matching criteria. It's in the eye of the beholder, but I'm going to say activity date is on or after today. And no matter what day it is, QuickBase will know it's 2021. QuickBase knows what day it is. So how are we looking here so far? Your summary field should be set up so that it's summarizing a specific field. It should be getting the minimum for the field activity date. And the matching criteria at the bottom should say that you're only going to summarize records where this is true about the activity, where the date is on or after today. So we don't care about the past here anymore. Not for this field. How do we feel? Are we feeling all right? If you've never done this before, you might not exactly know if you should feel good yet or not. You should feel good, though, because it's going to work. When you're ready, you can click Create. That's in the upper right corner, and you can call this the next scheduled activity. That's what I would call it. Here we go. I'm going to click OK here. Now, every contact has a next scheduled activity date and time. But we're going to do one more step here, and we're going to pass the baton one more time up to the companies table. So we're going to click Done. That's in the upper right corner. It's near Delete Relationship. Don't click that right now. We don't need that. You're going to click Done. It's going to bring you back to the relationships for the contacts table. And this time, you're going to click on the other relationship between companies and contacts. So the baton has been passed from activities to contacts. Let's pass it one more time from contacts to companies. And then let me know if that analogy doesn't really work. I'm still trying it out. I like it, though. But what's more important is that it makes sense to folks on the other side of the screen. So we're going to click companies to contacts. We're going to open that one up here. Now, you might notice that last activity is on the left, right? So that was the most recent activity. That baton has already been passed. Let's pass the other one. From this screen, you're going to click Add Summary Field. This time, it's going to be a little bit simpler. Oh, thank you, Matthew. All right. This time, it's going to be a little bit simpler to set up the summary field because part of the work's already done for us. So in this new summary field between companies and contacts, we are once again going to switch the radio button. We're going to say we want a summary of a specific field. And once again, we're going to ask to get a minimum. So switch total to minimum. And the field that we're going to get a minimum of is the next scheduled activity. Now, here's what's cool. We don't need to do the matching criteria. It's already done for us. Right? We've already said these are only going to be dates and times that happen in the future or earlier today. So we don't actually have to do the matching criteria. We could, it wouldn't hurt. It's just not necessary. It's already done beforehand. And when you're ready, you can click Create. Again, that's in the upper right. And you can just name it Next Scheduled Activity. That is what we call the original field. So if you'd rather name it something else, of course, go ahead and do what you want to do. Okay, but let's actually prove that this works, right? It's enough maybe for me to teach you this and you trust me as a trainer, but why don't I prove it to you that this works? Let's prove it to ourselves. When you're ready, you can exit your settings and let's go do this. Let's go add a future activity for one of these contacts. So you should be dropped on the contacts table, but if you weren't, fear not, just click on one of your contacts here. So let's see, who do we have? Who do we have? Let's pick Rosita here. Oh, well, Rosita's with QuickBase. I'm going to pick someone else. You've heard QuickBase enough. Oh, and I need to update the styling there of QuickBase. Whoops. Okay, let's pick someone else. How about Tony? All right, so Tony works for Curious Village. Let's add an activity for Tony. It's going to be an activity in the future. That's what matters. Set the activity date to the future. So maybe this is going to be let me just call it a check-in call. Activity date, it's tomorrow. How about that? May 28th. Although I'm trying to think of time zones right now. Is it May 28th for anyone right now? It might already be May 28th for someone here. So anyway, May 28th, 10 a.m., just set it to the future. Hit save and close. Now, remember the name of this person. Look down below in their record. There's their next scheduled activity. Okay, pretty cool, right? But let's take it one step up. Go back to their company. Click on their company name. For me, this is Tony Blossom at Curious Village. When I scroll down, yeah, next scheduled activity. There it is. Now, if you wanted to prove it even further, one other thing you could do is add another future activity, even further in the future with another contact. It's not required here, but for this company, I'll go ahead and add an activity for Georgette Starmore. I'm going to say that I have an activity with Georgette next week. And maybe that's also, maybe it's an intro call. Introduce myself. That's next week. Now, this will not be summarized up because it's not the next scheduled activity. It is upcoming, but it's not scheduled. Next, it's scheduled after the next one. So this one is still the one showing up as next here. How do you feel about that, folks? Where this might lead you to, though, is feeling like, okay, but enough of this baton passing. Why don't you just show me the activities right over here to the right? Why do I even have to navigate away to look at them? So if you've ever felt like that, like you would want to embed another report to the right here, then that's what we're going to show next. And something cool came into the chat here. Michelle had asked, can you show how you would have the next activity auto-populate if you know the contact or you know that you want to speak with them on a regular basis? Like if you wanted to regularly have it create itself, I would love to show that, but it would take a little bit of time. Michelle, what I would probably do is set up a recurring pipeline. So I'd set up a recurring pipeline to look through the data to understand who it is that we want to be in touch with and maybe have it every so often on a schedule add, or maybe every time we add an activity and that activity's date and time passes, we have it automatically go and add another one. So you could do it, but it would likely involve a pipeline. And if I start geeking out over that, probably won't finish the lesson here. So let's see if I can finish up with enough time to talk you through it afterward, though. But I believe we've got 16 minutes left for me to show you this last thing. So let me get through that, and then let's see if I can walk you through a little bit of what you're asking there, because it absolutely can be done, just with a different feature. So this final one here, you should be on your company's table. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a report link. We're going to tell it how to do what it needs to do, and then we're going to assign a report to it. You ready? From the company's table, this is where you should be, but if you're not, just go back to the company's table. Click on these settings. Once you're in the settings, you're going to head over to the fields, and you're going to click New. So you're going to add a new field. Okay, and here you're going to add a field label, and you're going to call it Activities. Or you can call it something else if you want, but activities is nice, simple, sensible. And the type is going to be report link. Now, I'll put money on the notion that this is probably a first time for some of you adding a report link by hand like this. It's not very common. And it's not a badge of expertise if you have or haven't. It's just not that common. But we are going to do it today, and you're going to learn the power of these report links when we do it. So, activities, it's a report link field. Sounding good so far? That's just step one. You're going to click add. And once your screen refreshes, you're going to be looking at your list of fields on this table, and you're going to look for activities. It's got a little yellow bar next to it to signify that it is the new field you added. You're going to click on the word activities. Okay, so this is where it's going to get a little bit complex. And this is where if I'm going to lose anybody, I might lose them here. And that's because the following steps are going to result in your browser launching a pop-up. And if you use something like Chrome and you haven't done this before, your browser is likely going to stop you in your tracks. So I will do my best to walk you through how to get around that. Here's what we need to do. We need to tell this report link field what records to look for. So if you scroll down just slightly here, look for the section that says report link field options. See this here? And what we're going to do is use the field relationship grid here to tell it how to match and what records to show. So first things first, see this drop down here on the left? I'm going to open it and close it a few times just so that you can see what I'm talking about. See that there? Go ahead and choose, let's choose company for now. So company is in the drop down on the left. Now here's where I might lose you. See the button on the right that says select target? Watch me before you click it, and then go ahead and click it because I want to see if you get stuck here. When I click this, look in the upper left part of my screen. See that little pop-up that just popped in? If you didn't get that, if that didn't pop up for you, that's because your browser, understandably, is blocking pop-ups because they're not terribly common these days. So what you might need to look for is in the upper right part of your screen, in your browser's address bar, you might have a little, it looks like a tiny window with an X through it or something similar to that. And if you click that, it should allow you to allow pop-ups from QuickBase. And I would say set it to always allow pop-ups because these are the only pop-ups that are going to pop up in QuickBase. And then you may need to click select target again. So let me know if that got you caught up. Put it in the attendee chat. You might get stuck there. Apologies if you do. If you didn't get stuck, you might see select an application or you might see select a field. So if you said select an application, you just need to type in the name of this application. Okay. It looks like I've done this one a little bit before, but you know what? I'm looking at my app name up here. I think I added an extra space in there. So let me try. Yeah, hooray for typos. So if you have a lot of applications, you're going to need to narrow it down. But then what it should do is relaunch that window and ask you to select a field. So what we're trying to do here is say, hey, company, you're going to go look at all of the activities on the activities table, and you're going to only find ones where the company name matches your company. So we're going to look in the list here. We're going to look for a line that says activities, company. I'm sorry, activities contact company, right? Unless you renamed your field. That's what we're going to look for. That's where the baton starts, right? Well, I guess technically it starts here on the companies table. That's where it ends up. So you're going to choose activities, contact dash company. So what that mean? That means that if we're looking at the company Curious Village, this report link knows to go look at all the activities where the company's name is Curious Village. If we're looking at the company Wind Wakers LLC, this report link knows when you're looking at that company, Wind Wakers LLC, this report should show you activities where the company is Wind Wakers LLC. A little tricky at first. Once you do it, though, and you see how it works, it's awesome. So now we've got the technology to show this. We just have to now put it on our form and tell it what report to show. So when you're ready, you click Save. We have about 9 minutes left in this training here. So if you felt like that got you a little bit caught up again, you can come back to this recording and then just center in on the last 15 minutes. You replay it as much as you want until you get it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to exit our settings. This should take us back to our companies table and looking at a specific record. If it didn't, just go ahead and open up your companies table, open up a company record, and then scroll down. Now, at first glance, you might think you did this wrong because you might see the field down below that says activities, and it might just show you the name of the company. That happened for anybody? That's expected. That's expected. It might not be what we expected, but that is expected behavior. So what we're going to do is we are going to customize our form and tell this report link that it should actually show an embedded report, not just a link to a report. So in the upper right, you're going to click Customize this form. See that up here? Once you land on the form customization screen, look to the left. This is your list of elements. This is the layout of your form. And I designed it ahead of time, but I'm going to help you through this here. So we're going to scroll down a little bit, and you're going to look for, it should be line 15, activities. Go ahead and click on the 15 and highlight that. Now, when you highlight that element there, that report link, look in the center. It says the field is called activities. The field type is a report link. Now look at the radio button below that. It says that it's going to display just a link to the related activities. Well, that's not exactly super helpful. So let's modify this and let's select the radio button below it that says display the related activities directly on the form. Oh, so when you do that, you get a little bit more to play with. And now you should see an option, a drop down, and above it, it says base the display on the report. And it says record picker report. Let's change that. Click the drop down. How about we do embedded for companies, because I created that ahead of time. So look in the list here. Second one from the top is embedded. Well, third one from the top, embedded for companies. And hey, just for the sake of gussying up this form a bit, with the activities report link highlighted, look in the lower left, click the button that says up. See where my cursor is here, moving it up and down? Click where it says up. Put this in spot number 12. And then once it's in spot number 12, take your cursor, put it over where it says 12, and move to the right and check that box there to put it in the same row as whatever is above it. Okay. When you're ready, click Save. Now, I understand that was like dozens of steps. Let me know if there's any step that you wanted to see in more detail again. But if you're ready, click Save. And drum roll, please. Okay. Over to the right, we have a list of activities. So that's pretty cool. Now, we would probably want to dress this up a little bit, maybe put the label contacts over to the left. Maybe to the right, we would want to show a separate report of activities that happened in the past and a separate report of activities that are going to happen in the future. Or maybe we would want to group them by the contact. We can do all that. All we need to do is create that on the activities table. And the cool thing is, maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. Go and customize your form again. That report link that you created, you can actually put it on the form as many times as you want. And you can do that so that you can show different reports. So I can have the activities report link on here dozens of times. And each instance could go show me a different kind of report. You could have one that's a bar graph. You could have one that's a pie chart. So you can embed multiple reports on these forms. I'm not going to save that. But you can embed multiple reports on these forms so that you can show as much information from other tables as you want. Whew. All right, so that was quite a workshop. I'm hoping that this is going to be useful for you. Hopefully one or maybe more of those 3 techniques of data reference that Lineage facilitates will help you out. But now, if you put your eyes back over toward the PowerPoint here, we just built a custom report link so that when we view a single customer record, a single company record, we can see all the activities with those contacts in an embedded report. So we did it. So thanks for coming to my session today. Just to review what we went over, I'm going to skip back to the learning goals here. It's a good time for us to retrospect here and see, did this guy teach us all the stuff he said he would? By the end of this session, now that we're at the end of the session, did I help you understand why creating unnecessary relationships can create some complication? I spent a little bit of time talking through why that can be challenging. I didn't necessarily show it, but feel free to try creating relationships between tables that don't necessarily need it, and you'll see what I mean. Now that the session is over, have I helped you identify when relationships aren't necessary? And have I helped you recognize Lineage in your app and helped you build to accommodate a streamlined data model? Things to think about, especially as you answer the survey that you'll get after this. So I'll stick around for a few moments here. If you want to see some examples, if you wanted to review anything here, I'll be here to help out. I do know that we get kicked out, maybe not in 2 minutes exactly, but pretty soon, I think. Right, Liam? We only have the stage for so long before the cane comes and pulls me off. So I'll stick around and awesome. All right. Well, thank you for the instant feedback, folks. I hope this was helpful for you. One thing to think about is if you already knew this stuff, hopefully I've shown you a few ways that you can illustrate this and teach it to other people. So hopefully if you're the only person at your organization that's building, hopefully someone else is interested in building along with you. It's always good to have a team. And this is a way that you can teach them some more sophisticated relationships and app structure. So awesome. I'm glad that people are thinking about how this could be useful. I'll stick around to answer some questions. Let's see what we got in the Q&A too. So let's see what we got. Any way to use a report link as a record selector? Walk me through that, Kristen, because I'm interested in that. It might be possible depending on what you're thinking of here. In the meantime, I'll look at the Q&A. I know some stuff has popped up in there, so I want to see what we got. Okay, let's see. In the Q&A, let's go with the... here's a good question. How many report links can you use on a form? I don't know. I haven't found a limit yet. So if you find it, let me know. I don't think there's a limit. I think it's kind of like how many fields can you have on a table until QuickBase tells you that you've taken up all the server space in our cloud, basically. So I think it's limitless. If you reach the limit, let me know. Hopefully that's helpful. So let's see here. Oh, thank you, Lewis. All right, so let's see here. Questions that came in order of when they came in. Question is, I have multiple connections on my grandparent table, so looking up becomes a lot of work because I need to know what selection 1 field 1 is versus selection 2 field 1. Oof. Is there a simpler way to do this? Well, I guess what I would ask is, Michael, that was you. If you can give me the specific table names, I might be able to think through this a little bit more. Sounds like an understandable problem to me. Sounds like an understandable challenge. But if you can give me the specific table names, let me know there. And then, Kristen, okay, so you clarified here. You have a child table, and you want to select records from, but you can't get it to work. Okay, so I'm trying to think through. Can you also tell me what tables you're thinking of here, and where you're starting and what you're trying to do? And I might be able to help you here. Also, keep in mind, too, I know we're going to get kicked out in a few minutes. I might not be able to give you the answer, so you can feel free to find us in the Slack channel for Empower. You can always create a care case, too, if you need. So when you're logged into QuickBase, a little question mark up at the very top. When you click that, you can click Manage Support Cases if I'm not able to answer your question in the next few minutes. Let's see. Oh, you want to see the relationship diagram? Yeah. Do you want to see like in the app itself, or the one that I have on in the slides? And Kristen, you got specific here. Purchase orders, a parent. PL line items, the child. So you're just going to audit certain line items. So when someone's on a purchase order, they're trying to add additional line items or edit line items, and that's where there's a challenge. And yeah, you bet. Let's share my app again here. Let me move this over. And relationship diagram. It's coming. Oh, we're getting a 2-minute warning. Let me see if I'm able to get some answers here. Sorry, we get booed at some point. All good things come to an end. All right, here's the relationship diagram for those who are curious. All right, let me see what else I can answer here. Oh, you want to just select a subset of line items. If Kara couldn't solve it, that's interesting. So I'm trying to think through that, Kristen. If it's like you're creating a purchase order, and when you do that, you always want it to create specific line items for you. Like every purchase order has certain line items that just by default you're going to add to the purchase order, or is it more like you want the embedded report to only show you certain ones when you're looking at a purchase order? Or maybe I got both of those wrong. I have to think about that one a little bit more. Oh, from a third-party source. Okay. The answer is definitely out there. If Kara wasn't able to direct you to it, I would definitely encourage you to go to community.quickbase.com, lay it out there. What I found, and what I'll just say in the last minute that I have here, because I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer your questions, but sometimes getting help with a challenge you have in QuickBase is just about articulating it in a way that the person you're working with can understand it. So there's almost always a solution. It's just a matter of getting the person to figure out the language that you're using. And it's kind of a two-way broadcast, right? It's the radio tower and the radio receiver itself both have to be kind of fine-tuned for each other. Select a subset and store it somewhere. I would say definitely bring that to the community or bring it into Slack, because there are going to be some folks who just want to get in and dig into that and solve it with you. And it is solvable. There's some way to solve it. So it looks like I'm getting the wrap it up symbol here. So thank you, folks. I'm sorry if I couldn't answer all of your questions. Head over to community.quickbase.com or head over to our Slack channel. I'll put that up on screen for the last moment we have here. So that's where you can go. And I really look forward to seeing you again for either another training or next year for Empower again. Enjoy the rest of Empower. Head over to university.quickbase.com if you want to take some more training next month. and happy building. Thanks, everybody. See you soon. Have a great rest of your day.